There was a time when I tracked the gaps between moments of genuine connection with Sabrina. Not the perfunctory pecks or accidental touches in passing, but real intimacy where she looked at me like someone she actually wanted. Initially, the intervals were brief, maybe 3 or 4 days. Then they stretched to a week and a half. Eventually, I abandoned the mental tally altogether. The exercise had become too painful, a form of self-torture where I documented my own insignificance in her world. Something fundamentally degrading exists in cataloging your own emotional abandonment. You watch the distance expand, a chasm widening between two people who once fit together seamlessly. I remember when we first moved into this house, how we couldn't keep our hands off each other. We'd christened every room with laughter and passion. Now those same rooms felt like monuments to something that had died quietly, without ceremony. Yet I persisted in my efforts. I manufactured explanations: workplace pressure, exhaustion, the natural ebb and flow of long-term relationships. Perhaps this was simply what marriage looked like after the initial spark faded. I'd heard friends joke about it at dinner parties, the inevitable cooling off that comes with familiarity. But their jokes always had an undercurrent of fondness, a shared understanding. What I felt wasn't cooling, it was freezing. Nobody warns you that emotional droughts feel like watching yourself disappear in slow motion. Nobody tells you that you'll start questioning every memory, wondering if the love you thought you shared was ever real or just a convincing performance she'd grown tired of maintaining. One evening, as we prepared for sleep, I attempted a simple gesture of affection. My hand moved across the mattress toward her, fingers seeking the familiar curve of her waist. She stiffened imperceptibly, a micro-reaction that screamed volumes. It was the kind of recoil you'd have if a stranger touched you on the subway. I remained motionless, hoping she might reciprocate, praying this was just a momentary thing. Nothing came. "Everything all right?" I ventured softly, my voice barely above a whisper. Her exhale carried irritation rather than fatigue. "Yeah, fine. Just tired, that's all." The explanation had become her default response, a phrase so worn from overuse it had lost all meaning. I withdrew my hand as though scalded and turned away, studying the shadows on our bedroom ceiling. The ceiling fan made its familiar clicking sound, the same sound that had been the soundtrack to so many nights of slowly realizing I was losing her. Her phone illuminated shortly after, casting that characteristic blue glow across her features, making her seem even more unreachable. The light painted her face in cold tones, and I watched from the corner of my eye as her expression transformed. The tired, irritated woman who'd just rejected my touch suddenly looked alive. "It's nothing personal," she offered without shifting her gaze from the screen. My drive just vanished completely. Something's off with me. I desperately wanted to accept this narrative. The alternative, that her desire hadn't disappeared but simply redirected away from me, felt unbearable. So I played the supportive partner, the understanding husband who prioritized her comfort over his own needs. I nodded sympathetically and suggested medical consultation. She waved it off as hormonal fluctuations or professional stress consuming all her bandwidth. "Work's crushing me right now," she explained, still not looking at me. "I barely have mental space for anything else. You know how demanding the new project has been. Anything else?" As though our physical connection had become another tedious obligation competing with grocery shopping and bill payments. As though the intimacy we'd once shared so freely had been downgraded to an item on an endless to-do list, one that never quite made it to the top. I understood, I assured her. We could take things at whatever pace she needed. I genuinely meant it. Intimacy was something to be shared, not demanded. I loved her. I would have waited indefinitely if we were navigating this together, if I felt like we were still a team facing a challenge rather than two strangers sharing a bed. But Sabrina wasn't waiting alongside me. She'd already departed emotionally, packed her bags, and left without ever telling me she was going. Her physical presence remained, her scent still lingered on the pillows, her clothes still hung in the closet, but the woman who used to surprise me with kisses during mundane moments had evaporated. In her place existed someone who regarded me with the same attention she'd give household furniture, maybe less. Perhaps I could have accepted even this. Perhaps I could have continued convincing myself this represented a temporary phase, a rough patch that all marriages go through. But one detail shattered the comfortable fiction I'd constructed, the elaborate castle of excuses I'd built to protect myself from the truth. As I faced away from her that night, staring at the wall and trying to will myself to sleep, I heard it, a soft laugh, barely audible but unmistakable. Not the polite chuckle you'd give to something mildly amusing. This was genuine delight, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. I glanced back to see her smiling at her phone screen, her expression animated, engaged, genuinely delighted. Her eyes sparkled in that blue light, the way they used to sparkle when she looked at me. A single thought pierced through my self-deception like a knife through silk. If her capacity for desire truly died, why does she still light up like that? Sabrina had always been somewhat reserved, carefully guarded with her emotions. I'd found it attractive initially, her selective communication and careful emotional boundaries. She wasn't one of those people who overshared or wore their heart on their sleeve. There was mystery to her, depth that took time to discover. Over years together, I'd learned to interpret her unspoken signals, understanding her moods through subtle cues, the way she'd twist her wedding ring when anxious, how she'd hum while cooking when she was genuinely happy. Now I felt completely lost, like someone wandering through a familiar city that had somehow rearranged all its streets overnight. The phone became her constant companion, practically an extension of her body. Nothing unusual about that in itself. Everyone's perpetually connected now, tethered to their devices like lifelines. But her behavior around it changed in ways that were impossible to ignore once I started paying attention. She angled the screen away from my sightline. Conversations happened behind closed doors, her voice dropping to hushed whispers when I approached. Her typing would accelerate urgently, fingers flying across the screen, then cease abruptly when I entered the room, like a record player someone had suddenly stopped. "Is something wrong?" I asked one evening, watching her quickly lock her phone as I walked into the kitchen. She barely glanced up. "No, why would there be? You seem preoccupied lately. Distant." She offered me a brief look and a smile that suggested I was being adorably paranoid, the kind of smile you'd give a child who's afraid of monsters under the bed. "Nathan, come on. I'm just exhausted. You're reading too much into things." "I'm fine, we're fine, everything's fine." I dropped it, cowardly in my avoidance of uncomfortable truths. Some part of me feared what I'd discover by pressing further, like knowing there's something terrible in the basement, but being too afraid to open the door and confirm it. The distance continued expanding, growing wider with each passing day. Her social calendar filled with increasingly frequent outings, events that somehow never included me. Girls' nights evolved from occasional to weekly rituals, then twice weekly, sometimes 3 times. Initially, I felt encouraged. I wanted her to maintain friendships, to feel balanced and fulfilled. A happy wife makes a happy life, isn't that what they say? I hoped she'd return home rejuvenated, that whatever was troubling her would be soothed by time with friends. Sometimes she did return smiling, cheeks flushed with wine and laughter. But those smiles weren't directed at me anymore. They'd fade the moment she walked through the door, like a light switch being flipped off. I remember a particular Friday with crystalline clarity, every detail etched into my memory. She dressed for another evening out, wearing a crimson dress I hadn't seen before, form-fitting and elegant, the kind of outfit she once reserved for our anniversary dinners or special occasions. The fabric hugged her curves in ways that made my breath catch. She looked stunning, like the woman I'd fallen in love with, and for a moment I felt that old familiar flutter. "You look stunning," I said, watching her apply makeup with practiced precision at the bedroom mirror. "Who's going tonight?" "Just Rachel and the regular group," she replied to her reflection, not to me. Her eyes never left the mirror, focused on perfecting her lipstick. "Mind if I tag along?" I asked, half joking, half desperate. "I could use a night out too." She laughed dismissively, a sound that felt like a door closing. "It's girls' night, Nathan. You'd hate it. Just a bunch of us talking about boring stuff, complaining about work, you know how it is." A quick kiss on my forehead, the kind you'd give a pet or a child, then she was gone. The door closed behind her with a decisive click, leaving me in the hollow silence of our home. I sat there on the edge of our bed, resisting the urge to imagine where she actually was, who she might be meeting, what prompted that particular smile, why she dressed like that for just Rachel and the girls. I maintained my grip on denial with white knuckles. I reminded myself not to become paranoid or controlling, not to turn into one of those suspicious, insecure husbands. She'd said her desire disappeared entirely, not just for me, for everything. I believed it because I needed to, because the alternative was a precipice I wasn't ready to look over. Until I saw the text message. Just a glimpse, really, a fraction of a second before she locked her screen with practiced quickness. But it was enough. A name, Marcus. The preview read, "Last night was incredible. When can I see you again?" Sabrina's screen went dark immediately, her thumb moving faster than I'd ever seen it move. She smiled at me as though nothing had occurred, as though I hadn't just seen something that made my stomach drop. "Who's Marcus?" I asked, keeping my tone casual, conversational, like I was asking about the weather. She barely hesitated, the lie ready and waiting on her tongue. "Someone Rachel knows. He was hitting on me after the gathering last week." I shut it down. Some guys just can't take a hint, you know. No nervousness in her voice. No defensive over-explanation. She'd clearly done this before, had practice. But something in her eyes didn't align with her words, a micro-expression of discomfort that flashed across her face before she could control it, and my chest constricted painfully. She returned her attention to the television as though the moment had passed, as though I was simply being oversensitive again, as though she hadn't just lied to my face. Maybe I was being oversensitive. Or maybe I'd finally glimpsed the first thread unraveling, and once you see that first thread, you can't unsee it. I used to possess self-assurance, a quiet confidence. Not arrogance, just steady belief in who I was and what I offered. I wasn't exceptionally attractive or wealthy, no movie star looks or trust fund. But I was dependable and genuine. The person who handled household repairs unprompted, who remembered important dates without digital reminders, who brought her coffee in bed on Sunday mornings, just because. Lately, though, I'd started examining my reflection differently, searching for flaws, for reasons. Crow's feet appearing near my eyes, lines that hadn't been there a year ago. Slight weight gain around my midsection from too many stress-eaten dinners. The posture of someone exhausted from constant effort rather than enjoying life. Shoulders slumped like I was carrying invisible weight. Questions I never anticipated asking myself emerged, whispered in my head during quiet moments. Am I insufficient? Did I change too drastically? Did she? When did I stop being enough? Was I ever enough? There's a particular heartbreak that arrives without shouting or door slamming or theatrical confrontations. It comes through silence, through hands that no longer reach for yours, through goodnight utterances spoken to the wall rather than to you, through the slow, agonizing realization that you've become invisible to the person you'd give anything to be seen by. I intensified my efforts, determined to bridge the gap between us. One Saturday morning, I woke up early and prepared her favorite breakfast, French toast with strawberries and fresh brewed coffee, the expensive kind she loved from that little shop downtown. The table was set before she woke, complete with a small vase of flowers I'd picked up from the corner market. I wanted to remind her of the early days, when we'd spend lazy mornings together, when she'd look at me like I hung the moon. She wandered down yawning, hair messy from sleep, and noticed the food. "Oh, thanks," she said flatly before sitting and scrolling through her phone. No smile, no affectionate gesture, just acknowledgement. As though I were a roommate who happened to cook, or a service she'd hired. She ate mechanically, eyes glued to her screen, and I sat across from her feeling like I was watching my marriage die one French toast breakfast at a time. "I was thinking," I ventured, maintaining a light tone despite the tightness in my chest. "Maybe we could do something together tonight. That restaurant overlooking the harbor you love? The one where we had our first anniversary." She didn't look up from her phone. "I've got a virtual thing with the book club or something." "Maybe tomorrow then?" I heard the pleading note in my voice and hated it. "We'll see," she said flatly, still not looking at me. "I've been so drained." "It's not about you, Nathan. I just haven't felt connected to that kind of thing lately." That kind of thing. As though we represented a category she'd mentally unsubscribed from, a newsletter she no longer wanted to receive. As though years of building a life together could be dismissed as that kind of thing. I nodded, concealing my devastation behind a forced smile. She didn't notice, or perhaps didn't care. I couldn't tell anymore. The woman sitting across from me might as well have been a stranger. That afternoon, I drove aimlessly, no destination in mind, just needing to get out of that house that felt less like a home every day. At a rest stop, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked depleted, not physically, but something deeper, like someone maintaining a smile while slowly suffocating. Like someone pretending to be fine while everything inside them crumbled. What did she need that I couldn't provide? Someone younger, more exciting, more assertive? Someone who didn't ask permission or try to understand, who just took what they wanted? Or was it simpler? Maybe she simply didn't love me anymore. No dramatic rupture, no obvious affair, just gradual decay like a house slowly rotting from the inside out. But that name continued nagging at me, scratching at the back of my brain. Marcus. Who was he? What did he have that I didn't? Why did that message say last night was incredible, when she'd supposedly shut him down? I wasn't naturally jealous, had never been the type to question or doubt. But since that message, it occupied my thoughts like a splinter lodged too deep to extract, painful every time I brushed against it. One evening, I mentioned it again, carefully, trying to sound casual. "That guy who texted you, Marcus, has he tried contacting you again?" She looked up from her laptop, and there it was, a flash of annoyance that she quickly masked. "Nathan, are you seriously still fixated on that?" "It was nothing. I'm not accusing you," I said quickly, defensively. "It just felt strange, that's all. The way the message was worded." She closed her laptop with excessive force, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "You're being paranoid." He messaged once. I ignored it. "That's the end of it. Can we please drop this?" I wanted desperately to believe her. But something in her expression, the tension in her jaw, the agitated tapping of her foot beneath the table, the way her eyes wouldn't quite meet mine, all of it suggested otherwise. Every instinct I had screamed that she was lying. "All right," I said quietly, backing down like I always did. "I trust you." But I didn't. Not completely. Not anymore. And that realization broke something fundamental inside me, some essential piece of who I was. I'd never been the kind of person who didn't trust their partner. Now I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone I didn't want to be. It happened on a Wednesday, an unremarkable day in most ways. Overcast skies, threatening rain, quiet house, another day in what had become an endless string of lonely days. Sabrina left early, claiming she had coffee with a friend followed by a yoga workshop downtown. Some new instructor everyone was raving about, she said. She kissed my cheek absently on her way out. I believed her. I always did, even when intuition screamed otherwise, even when every fiber of my being knew something was wrong. While organizing the kitchen, doing the mindless tasks that filled my days now, I accidentally knocked her duffel bag from the counter. It fell with a heavy thud, opening partially and spilling some contents across the floor. I bent to collect everything, and that's when I saw it. A small jewelry box, elegant and clearly expensive, the kind of packaging that comes from boutique stores, not department stores. Curiosity overcame me. With trembling fingers, I opened it to find a silver bracelet, intricate and beautiful, delicate chains woven together in a patterned scene before in high-end jewelry stores. I'd never seen it before, and I would have remembered. I knew her jewelry collection intimately, had helped her organize it just last month. This piece hadn't come from me. It hadn't been in her collection. My chest tightened, heart hammering against my ribs. I stared at it, demanding silent answers. Where did you come from? Who gave you to her? When? Why was it hidden in her gym bag? Perhaps a friend gifted it. Perhaps she purchased it herself as a treat. Perhaps there was a perfectly innocent explanation that I was too paranoid to see. Perhaps. I returned it exactly as I found it and closed the bag with shaking hands, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it again. I didn't want to become the suspicious spouse who searches through belongings, who rifles through pockets and reads private messages. But suspicion had already taken root and was spreading rapidly, like poison through my veins. That evening she returned energized, practically glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright, her whole demeanor transformed. "God, today was perfect," she announced cheerfully, dropping her purse and keys on the counter with a clatter. "Just what I needed. You should do something for yourself soon, babe. You seem stressed. Maybe hit the gym or see some friends." I forced a smile, my face feeling like a mask. "Glad you enjoyed it. How was the yoga?" "Amazing. Really centered me, you know. I feel like a new person." She kissed me lightly, that perfunctory brush of lips she'd perfected, barely making contact, then headed upstairs to shower, humming a tune I didn't recognize. I sat there at the kitchen table, smiling, nodding numb. Her radiance, the bracelet hidden in her bag, the explanations that no longer held weight, all of it swirled in my head like a storm I couldn't escape. After she fell asleep that night, her breathing deep and even beside me, I did something I'd sworn I never would. Something that made me feel sick even as I did it. I opened her laptop, hands shaking, heart pounding so loud I was sure it would wake her. I didn't want to invade her privacy. I didn't even know what I hoped to find. Just something concrete, clarity, confirmation, or ideally, a reason to feel ashamed for doubting her, proof that I was wrong and paranoid and she'd been faithful all along. Her email was open, she'd forgotten to log out. And there it sat, not buried deep or carefully hidden, just tucked in the promotions folder where she assumed nobody would look, where spam and advertising usually lived. Subject line: reservation confirmed for Friday. Same suite. Can't wait to see you again. Sent from m.torres@techventures.com. No greeting, no signature, no emojis or pleasantries. Just raw, direct familiarity. The kind of message you send to someone you know intimately. My heart didn't race. It stopped entirely, just ceased beating for what felt like an eternity. I stared at those words, reading them over and over, letting their reality settle in, becoming undeniable truth rather than suspicion. A reservation. The same suite, meaning this wasn't their first time. This was established routine. He's anticipating seeing her again because they have an established pattern, a rhythm, something ongoing and deliberate. Everything inside me collapsed like a building imploding, falling inward on itself. I clicked on the email with numb fingers. The details were all there. A boutique hotel downtown, Friday night, suite 412. The same suite they'd apparently used before. How many times? How long had this been going on? How many nights had she lied to my face, and then slept beside me like nothing was wrong? I closed the laptop carefully, quietly, and sat in darkness for an extended period. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I couldn't tell. The house's silence felt suffocating, oppressive, like the air itself was too thick to breathe. I sat there in our bedroom, listening to my wife sleep peacefully beside me while my entire world disintegrated. That was the moment everything shattered. Not just trust or marriage or vows. Me. Something essential inside me fractured that night, some core part of who I was, and once broken, I knew it could never be properly restored. You can't unfracture something. You can't unknow what you know. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed more, not additional proof. The proof was undeniable now, but more strength. More time to process the magnitude of what I'd discovered. Because now I understood with brutal clarity. The problem was never her diminished desire. It was that she simply didn't desire me. She desired someone else. Her libido wasn't gone, it had just relocated. I became a specter in my own home, moving through rooms like a ghost. Sabrina continued her routines smoothly, smiling, messaging, moving through daily life with the ease of someone who believed I'd never challenge her. That I was too polite, too passive, too terrified of confrontation, too invested in keeping the peace. She wasn't entirely wrong. I'd spent years avoiding conflict, smoothing over problems, being the understanding one. Initially, I thought I needed documentation, screenshots, receipts, timestamps, evidence that would hold up in court. But what I actually needed was time. Time to process it, to stop fabricating excuses, to mourn the marriage I'd believed we had, to grieve the person I'd thought she was. I began observing everything with new awareness, seeing patterns I'd missed before. How she placed her phone face down on surfaces, always, without fail. The sudden importance of Rachel's dinner party, requiring expensive perfume and ride-sharing instead of driving herself. How she called me babe more frequently now, almost reflexively, maintaining the illusion of affection while providing none of the substance. One evening, we brushed our teeth side by side, just like always, engaged in this mundane ritual of domestic life. The mirror fogged slightly from our breath. The only sounds were the bathroom fan humming and bristles scraping against enamel. She glanced at me in the mirror. You've been really quiet lately. Even quieter than usual. I rinsed my mouth, buying time. Have I? Yeah. Is everything okay? You're not yourself. I met her eyes in the mirror, her reflection meeting mine. For 1 second, I considered saying everything, tearing down the facade, demanding truth. But I didn't. I wasn't ready. Work's been challenging, I said instead, offering her the same type of hollow excuse she'd been feeding me for months. She nodded, satisfied with the lie, relieved she didn't have to dig deeper. Mine too. This project is killing me. She didn't press further. Didn't embrace me or offer comfort. Just walked away humming that same unfamiliar tune, leaving me standing alone in the bathroom. I stood there, watching the mirror's fog slowly dissipate, revealing my reflection more clearly, just like the truth was slowly revealing itself to me. Days later, I checked our joint bank account, something I did periodically to track our finances. Not from suspicion initially, just habit. We'd always maintained financial transparency, prided ourselves on being a team. There were charges I didn't recognize, transactions that made my stomach turn. A wine bar downtown we'd never visited together. A boutique hotel in the city center, the same one from the email. 2 ride-sharing charges, both late evening, both ending at addresses nowhere near Rachel's neighborhood, nowhere near any friend I knew she had. The amounts were small enough to avoid notice if you weren't looking carefully. But I was looking now, really looking, and I saw the pattern. Every Thursday night for the past 2 months. Like clockwork. That was it. That was when it became irrefutable. Not theoretical, not suspicious, not possible. Real. Documented. Undeniable. She'd been lying systematically with words, smiles, kisses, presents. And the part that destroyed me most, she was skilled at it. So skilled I'd nearly believed her for months. So skilled I'd nearly blamed myself, had spent countless nights wondering what was wrong with me. But nothing was wrong with me. Everything was wrong with her, with us, with what we'd become. But now I was finished with excuses. Finished with being understanding. Finished with being the one who always gave in. Something inside me transformed over the following days. Not violently or dramatically. It was subtle, a profound stillness, a quiet comprehension settling over me like snow. I was living inside something dead, and I refused to decay alongside it. I didn't orchestrate it cinematically. There was no dramatic soundtrack playing in my head, no storm raging outside our windows, no whiskey in hand for courage. Just a Sunday evening, ordinary and unremarkable. We'd ordered Chinese takeout, her choice as always. She barely touched it, claiming she was too full, though I noticed she'd spent most of dinner texting beneath the table, her phone hidden in her lap. She thought I didn't see. But I saw everything now. We settled in the living room afterward, the remnants of our meal still on the coffee table. Television on, some reality program she enjoyed but never truly watched. I observed her more than the screen, studying this woman I'd shared my life with, trying to reconcile the person I'd loved with the stranger she'd become. She laughed at something on the show, but the expression didn't touch her eyes. It was performative, automatic. That's when I decided. No more waiting. No more gathering evidence. No more pretending. I muted the television with the remote. She looked at me, confused, slightly annoyed at the interruption. What's wrong? I stared at her, calm and steady, my voice surprisingly even. I know. She blinked, her expression carefully neutral. Know what? There it was. That flicker, barely perceptible but unmistakable to someone who'd lived beside that face for years. Her pupils contracted slightly, her jaw tensed almost imperceptibly, her breathing changed rhythm. Know what, Nathan? She repeated, but her voice had changed, gotten slightly higher. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse dramatically, or throw the evidence in her face. I simply said, speaking each word carefully, I know about Marcus. The hotel reservations, the bracelet, the emails, the late-night rides to addresses that aren't Rachel's. How you dress up every Thursday night. How you won't touch me, but somehow always have energy for those evenings. The color drained from her face. Her lips parted, not in shock exactly, in preparation, her mind scrambling to construct a defense, cycling through possible responses. Nathan, she began, hands rising in a placating gesture, as though calming an unreasonable child who didn't understand. It's not what you're thinking. You're misunderstanding. Please, I said sharply, cutting her off. Don't. I've already heard all the excuses. The hormones, the stress, the exhaustion, the low libido. I've heard it all. She looked as though she might cry, eyes beginning to water. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no urge to comfort her, nothing. Do you understand, I continued, voice low and controlled, how many nights I blamed myself? How many times I stood in front of the mirror, wondering what was wrong with me? How many times I thought maybe I'm simply not enough anymore, maybe I let myself go, maybe I failed you somehow. Nathan, it wasn't like that, she tried again. I interrupted her, my voice hardening. Then what was it, Sabrina? What do you call sneaking around, lying directly to my face every single day, pretending you'd lost all interest in intimacy when you'd simply redirected it elsewhere? What do you call letting me suffer, letting me think I was the problem, while you were fucking someone else? The profanity hung in the air between us. I never cursed at her. Never. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Her mouth opened. No words emerged. That silence, that inability to defend herself, contained more truth than any confession. You could have told me, I said, feeling tears in my own eyes now but refusing to let them fall. You could have left. You could have said you're unhappy, and we could have addressed it like adults or ended it with some dignity. But instead you chose this. You chose to make me feel crazy, inadequate, unwanted, while you were out there with him. Tears formed in her eyes now, spilling over, running down her cheeks. I didn't plan for this to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought maybe you didn't even care anymore. You never fought for me, never. I nearly laughed, a bitter sound that surprised even me. You thought I didn't care? I was destroying myself trying to make you feel loved again. I made breakfast, planned dates you never agreed to, tried to touch you, talk to you, connect with you. You were everything to me. Everything. I felt alone, she whispered. So did I replied. But I didn't seek comfort in someone else's arms. The words hung there, sharp and final. She looked down, perhaps ashamed, perhaps just cornered. You've already decided, haven't you? She said. You're leaving. I took a deep breath. I haven't decided anything. You did, the moment you chose him. I stood, walked toward the hallway, then paused. I'll sleep in the spare room tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss how to separate the life you've already abandoned. Then I left her there on the couch, surrounded by the silence she'd constructed between us. The spare room smelled stale and neglected. I hadn't opened its windows in months. It housed things we didn't know how to handle, old blankets, forgotten photo albums, winter coats rarely worn. Now it was mine. I lay there staring at the ceiling, unfamiliar silence buzzing in my ears. The walls seemed thinner than I remembered. I could hear her crying down the hall. Muffled sobs, sharp inhales, a drawer opening and slamming. I didn't move, didn't comfort her, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about it. The next morning, we didn't speak. She made coffee. I didn't drink it. I made toast. She didn't eat. We moved around each other like ghosts in a burned structure. Around midday, I sat her down at the dining table where we'd once shared Sunday breakfasts and stupid jokes that made her laugh until she snorted. Now it was the table where we discussed dismantling a marriage. I'll find an apartment, I said. I'll take the couch until then. She nodded, eyes red, voice absent. We discussed logistics, calm and mechanical, like negotiating a business dissolution rather than processing the remains of a shared life. I didn't ask if she was still seeing him. I didn't care. Something had broken too profoundly to repair. Not just trust or love. Me. Weeks passed. I moved out quietly, taking only what belonged to me, leaving memories hanging on walls. The first night in the apartment proved harder than anticipated. Not because I missed her, but because I didn't recognize myself. I sat on a mattress on bare floors, surrounded by unopened boxes, feeling like someone who'd survived a crash but couldn't remember who they were before impact. Occasionally, I'd recall her words. I didn't plan for this to happen. As though betrayal were accidental. As though love simply stumbled and fell into someone else's life. But betrayal isn't a stumble. It's a choice. 1,000 small choices made in secret. And now I had to make mine. About a month later, I received a message from her. I miss you. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. Because I finally understood, she didn't miss me. She missed the version of me who would have forgiven her. And he no longer existed. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.